Hey, this is Andy Powell of Wishbone Ash, and you're listening to the Total Kit Car on YouTube.
Hi, welcome to the Total Kit Car YouTube channel. My name's Steve Hull, editor of TKC Mag and TotalKitCar.com, and welcome to another episode in our Historyfile series. This one is part 2. We're going to crack straight on to this one. This one's part 2 in the pair of Jeff Jago videos or voiceovers. And part 2 we will be dealing with Jeff's career in, shall we say, inverted commas, conventional kit cars, of which he sold over 2,000, and that puts him in the annals of the industry greats, really. Not only for volume sales, but for being just such a great engineer and pioneer. Talking of pioneers, I mean, Jeff is also going to be an industry great because of his exploits from the mid-60s. Indeed, this is August 2025. It's 65 years since Jeff produced his first hot rod. An amazing achievement, and it's just a tribute to a real pioneer, really. I won't go over that first part. If you just go and seek it out, you'll find it, and just you get the background to his early part of his career and his sort of beginnings there, really. And if I go over it too much, then I'm going to end up taking up after this video, and I need to be more precise, less rambly. I think I just made that word up. Ramble less, and by the way, we haven't got to worry about music in the background here at TKC. We keep it real, so you may well hear the TKC washing machine going through its final cycle and final spin. So if you hear rumbling, it's not my stomach, it's the we just keep it real here. It's the washing machine going through its business. So apologies if you hear that in the background, but I'm afraid we don't run to a soundproof recording studio. Moving swiftly on. Anyway, so I will just recap. Jeff decided he got some inquiries from some customers for something a little bit more rugged in kit car terms, I think, that they'd like to build. Maybe a military style. Now he thought, well, I know someone with a Willis Jeep body, and he went to see it, but it turned out it was in thick brambles in the middle of an aged blackberry bush, and you know the perils of a blackberry bush. The fruit are well protected by stinging nettles, thorns, brambles, whatever, and I've often found giant spiders as well, which are never particularly my favourite. But anyway, he saw it. The bloke said to him, if you can get it out, you can have it. And so, braving the perils, Jeff and his cohorts did just that, and they had a Willis Jeep body to produce from their first kit car body from. Now that car was initially called, because it was shall we say Jeep style, and I don't wish to upset anyone at Chrysler here, it's an American style Jeep shape, and he called it the Jago Jeep. Why wouldn't he, really? Well, naively probably, but he called it the Jago Jeep, and promptly within very short order Chrysler objected to that, so Jeff changed it to put a G on the front. So clever clogs called it the Geep, but of course he was just trying to appease Chrysler. So the Jago Jeep, people still called it the Jago Jeep. That's kind of because it looks like one, and that was what it was first initially known as when it went off like a volcano in sales terms. So clearly it wasn't just like those couple of people that said that it would be a really good idea, Jeff, if you produce a World War II style American Jeep kit, and that's what he did, and they were right, because other people shared that view. And incidentally, quick word, because I'm going to forget if I'm not careful, the boys and girls at the Jago Owners Club are fantastic. It's one of the most, always has been one of the most proactive clubs around, really. Really nice folk. They are so passionate about their cars. Some of them, well, I've never really seen a bad Jago Jeep, because it's a nice kit to build. It's an easy kit to build, or straightforward I should say, because no kit's easy. And you can end up with a good result, and the encouragement of your fellow members at the Jago Club will ensure that you can find out the information and get the help you need. So big up to the Jago Owners Club. So there we are. So he had to rename it, and that's where he came up with the word Sandero. Now, there's an interesting twist to Sandero as well, but let's just start with that. Jeff had also, at the same time as developing the, goodness knows, it was called the Sandero, wasn't it? No, the original Sandero, shall we say. It was a stillborn car. He did actually show it at a show somewhere, maybe Hindhead, Philby's Hindhead show. But he certainly put it on display somewhere. But I think Jeff has ideas and he runs with them. But if there's an idea that he doesn't like, or subsequently doesn't like, he'll just cut it straight away. He's done that on a couple of projects, as we'll discover. The original Sandero was one of them. So looking for another name and needing to find another name quickly, he remembered that he produced the Sandero, so he called the naughty Jeep name, he renamed that Sandero, if that makes sense. But that Sandero, and we'll put a photo up of that original Sandero, by the way, was a different car, but it's same name, different car. But I suppose we're moving on down the line a bit, but it's interjecting slightly in a kind of reverse way. Renault, when they took over Dacia, called one of those Dacia models, or Dacia. I refuse to call it Dacia, because when it was just that Romanian company and they sold their ropey cars, and let's be honest, they were a little bit, shall we say, rudimentary back in the day. They're brilliant now, by the way. My daughter's got a new, is it the Mark III Duster, and it's brilliant. Love it. But when they weren't like that, they weren't like that. But anyway, they called that their first Dacia model under Renault, they called it Sandero. And Jeff decided that he kind of had been using that name for over 40 years at that time. So he objected to it, and he came to a licensing deal with Renault, or Dacia's arm, Renault's Dacia arm, which I think is kind of a nice little irony. Right, moving back to 1971. So it was originally Ford Anglia 105e based. Jeff was familiar with those, and they were popular and abundant and inexpensive to get at that time. The Mark II moved to Morris Minor parts, and that arrived in 1974 with the definitive, and I guess we all, as what we kind of associate the Jago Sandero with, Ford Escort Mark I or Mark II. That was in 1976. By the time Jeff had sold his last one in 1997, they'd done over 2,000. Jeff's of a mind it's 2,000. Well, he told me about 5 or 6 years ago, 2,200 of those, and I believe him on that, obviously. And there's certainly enough. You still see them out there. After 1997, it went to Jeff's cousin, I believe, a guy called Andy Belfield, who was in South Wales. He was very low key, but he marketed it, and he sold a few. I'm not sure how many, but I don't think we're going to be troubling the 2,200s too much. Jeff had sold the lion's share of those, really. So that's a very good selling kit. We got to talk about I always thought it was great, and I drove one and I really liked it. I've driven a couple of them actually, but I really liked it. He brought a thing out called the Samurai. Picture of it here, and you may well be familiar with that, even though it sold less than 10% of the Sandero in sales terms. It's a very striking, I guess, of a road tracks type in styling. Dakar style. It's a very striking looking kit, and I always liked it, and I was surprised that it only sold about 130 kits. Really, overwhelmingly, it was all Sanderos really in terms of sales. But and that's another case in point. Jeff had a really good marketing guy during the 80s, a guy called Steve Smith. And the works manager at that time was an off-road racer, larger than life character called Jens Neuss, and that Samurai was the work of Jens and Steve. Jeff gave it the kind of the tip, the seal of approval. It was launched. They displayed it at shows, and as I say, they sold over 130 of them. And then Jeff decided he didn't want to sell those anymore, and it was withdrawn. And I know not why. Styling wasn't for everybody, but it was big and bold, and it was off-roader meets beach buggy, which I've heard it described, and I'd probably agree. Its styling was Marmite-like. You either liked it or you didn't, and I just get the feeling that Jeff didn't. Now he's spear off in all sorts of different directions now. After Andy Belfield had sold a few, it actually went back to Jago Developments. Jeff, the company still existed, and it was still on the same site at Quarry Lane. Jeff was still owned it, but took very much a back seat, and it was run by a guy called Colin Farron. Now they were concentrating, they'd switched really. They weren't doing so much commercial fabrication work, although they did do that. They were concentrating on commercial GRP work. And Colin was, I think, had worked for Jeff for a long time, got a handle on the business, and he knew that the skills they had on site in terms of glass fibre. They haven't done it for a while. If you've happened to listen to some videos where I've mentioned it 5 times in a row, then you're going to be fed up with it. But I have to always assume that the people that are listening to these voiceovers don't know very much, or as much as most enthusiasts do, about the industry, and we should always recognise that. So if you hear the terms GRP, fiberglass, and glass fibre, they are all, in intents and purposes, they are the same thing. I try not to, and I fail sometimes, but I try not to use the word fiberglass, even though it's the one that falls naturally to tongue, because that's really what it is. In the UK, I don't use it. I try not to, because out of respect of the trademark holder, it's a trademarked name, and I don't like to infringe that that trademark. So I try and use glass fibre, or GRP's easy, glass reinforced plastic, which is what it is, which is what the material is. So let's just clear that one up. There's a few things where I will stop these voiceovers if I think it's something that we all know, but other people might. And the last thing you want when you're listening to something, because I've done it myself, I have to go Googling what a certain word means, because I've enjoyed something and then think, well, what the heck does that mean? So anyway, interjecting there slightly. Sorry if you've copped those in 5 videos in a row, but back to the story now. Anyway, so Colin Farron had got a nice number in TV, film, and theatre. I suppose props work, fiberglass, and he'd made all sorts of things for all sorts of films and TV programs. And indeed, he had a lovely line when I last saw them and saw him there. He was doing, if you're a garden centre visitor, and they still sell them. I don't think he's doing. Well, they're not doing them anymore, I don't think, but other people are. But certainly for quite a long time, when you see these fountains, these water feature fountains, and sometimes you see them looking like trees, and sometimes you see them looking like great big stones. Colin and his Jago Developments was producing those. So that's what they were doing, and doing a nice job of it as well. And that's something they'd always been involved in, but maybe not so the TV work and the garden work. But back in the early days, it's important to remember that Jeff's Jago company was fabricating stuff for all sorts of clients, from industrial to automotive and beyond. In the first video, I'd mentioned that they would supply fledgling or newbie kit car manufacturers with a universal space frame chassis package, which would underpin their car, tailored to their needs. But he also, one of his biggest clients was Panther Cars, of course, and Jeff made all the chassis, front suspension, tube axles, for quite a few of Panther's models, 1-offs, 2-offs, and to production stuff like the Callisto, I think. And they made fiberglass bodies for companies, other manufacturers, such as Christopher Neal Lotus, the CN Sprint. That was one of quite a few that Jeff produced the bodies for. But under Colin Farron, I think they were even doing berthing pools concealment work for TV programs, I say. And I think it gets even more sort of curious, really, that they were doing military target drogues and things like that, replacement parts for statues, statue of Aurora, and the lions. That kind of was Jago's handiwork, and that's sat atop the King's Theatre in Southsea. That's Jago. Jago produced that. And as Colin told me once, if you want anything making out of glass fibre, he could create it for you. And they were actually doing, and after Belfield had stopped doing it, they didn't sort of trumpet it very much, but Jago started to offer Sandero kits again. 2010, he was selling them at £1,900. And I don't know if he did any of those, but he could certainly give you, I'll sell you replacement body panels for your Sandero. He always could, actually. And then we go, let's talk about Stuart Jago. So Stuart is Jeff's son, obviously, a chip off the old block, a gifted painter. He didn't just paint cars, he could paint ornate finishes on anything. He was also a national level motocross rider. I think he did some bike tests for some motorcycle magazines over the years. And his business, Jago Designs, he was located in a couple of units behind the main Jago one. But I now notice, I haven't spoken to Stuart for a while, but I now notice on the main road, the old Jago factory is loud and proudly branded as Jago Designs. And he did have a website, sjagodesigns.co.uk. Tell him that Steve sent you if you have any queries about his work. As I say, tackled all sorts of jobs, bread and butter, general repair stuff on cars, to real specialised glass fibre refurbishment. And he worked, and he painted all stuff: jet skis, motorbikes, jute boxes, pub signs, custom choppers, and obviously cars, you name it. And he did repair to laminated surfaces as well. So really talented guy. He'd also do signs for people, and indeed, anything. I think that sign on the outside of that building is Stuart's. And of course, he hasn't got the yellow body shell that goes over the A27. Was up by the factory car park on the A27. That had to go because of the metal footbridge that went over the A27. He's now put, I think it's a black one, and he's put it back. It's not quite, sadly, as visual as it was, but I was stuck in traffic the other day, as I always am every time I go to Chichester. Lovely city, lovely part of the world. The traffic is horrendous, and I hate those roundabouts, I've got to tell you. And I was stuck in one of the regular queues I get when I go that way, in that part of West Sussex. And I just happened to look and think of old days and fondly look at the Jago factory, and there it was, sitting on a 40-foot storage container. So good on you, Stuart, and a big up for that. One thing Jeff was heavily into, by the way, I think he's pretty much retired now. He's still, I hear, got his man cave at the bottom of his garden in Chichester, and that's full of his toys and mementos, and I still think he has a little potter around. But one thing he was doing, and certainly in the noughties and into the sort of 2010s, he'd been a member of the Fareham and District Society of Model Engineers for many years, and was well into his 7¼ inch gauge scale steam railways. Had one in his garden, I think. Anyway, he had built some beautiful carriages and loco, I think, as well. But he also Stansted Park, which I think was maybe a garden centre, or one of those sort of gardens that you pay a couple of quid and whatever, and you go and visit and enjoy yourself with a picnic. He had a lovely one in our grounds, in Stansted Park. I think he opened it in 2005, and I've seen some photos, I've seen a little video of it. It's a spectacular thing. Typical Jago attention to detail and creativity shine through on it. A substantial thing, and it was half a mile long, that layout. And Jeff would sit there, I think, several times a week, and take people and visitors for little rides around the grounds. And I think it's listed as one of Britain's great little railways. So I think that's good. And I think he built, I think there's 6 little locomotives that he one in particular is pretty notable. Is it called Cheyenne? I'm not into these things, forgive me, but I do remember some notes, and if you're into this yourself, it's 280 type, and Jeff built that in 2002. I think it was every Wednesday he was doing that, Wednesday, Saturday and Sunday, and public holidays between 11 and 4. I don't think he's doing that anymore. But as I say, if Stuart or Jeff or one of their friends and associates is listening to this, we send our kindest regards to Jeff, a true pioneer and a very nice man. And I'm pleased to have done this little 2-parter. And so anyway, that's the 2-part Jeff tribute, Jeff Jago. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for giving us time in your busy day. Really appreciate it. Look forward to welcoming you again next time, wherever you are in the world. I won't be jealous. I wish you a great day, and thank you so much again for visiting. I'll see you down the road.